Welcome back to the No Boring Stories podcast. I, of course, am Alex Street, and I am joined today by my friend who is just around the corner here. I mean, I'm talking to people all across the world in this podcast. It is a joy to connect with somebody who is, I mean, really within walking distance if in comparison to everybody else. But Rachel Joy is here, and we're going to dive into her story. Rachel, how are you?
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm fabulous, as previously speaking before this recording.
That's my word. You asked me how I was earlier. I was like, fabulous. You're like, that is a dynamic word, man.
Yes, because
Okay.
like you said, most people just usually answer, "Oh, I'm good. You?" and they just breeze over it. So
Hmm.
yeah, we're
Okay, but are you
fabulous.
real?
We're
Are
here.
you
We're about
really?
to create magic.
That's it. There we
Yes.
go. Excellent. Okay, good. We're in this creative space together. We get that is a fun part of this. I think you're the first, one of the only people that has talked about, and you mentioned it a couple times now, just in our opening conversation, and now after hitting record, that we're creating something here
Mm.
today. Um, Tell me about that, like that idea. Is that how you go into podcasts? Is that how you go into your day, into, you even doing your own thing?
I mean, yes, 100%. When you said even doing your own thing, I hate to use the word content creator because I like sometimes don't think of myself as a creative, but deep
Mm.
down, that's what we're doing with this work, whether we're creating content to get our message out there and attach and connect with our audience, or we're creating a transformation in a coaching session, we're constantly creating. So when it comes to a podcast, we're creating together. Whatever transpires in this conversation is a creation that is hopefully we intend to impact somebody in some way,
It
right?
really is. Yes, of course. That is, I think, uh, in my humble opinion, the most beautiful way to look at this. I mean, yeah, every day is that you're taking part of an active creation, in an active creation,
Yeah.
in this world. I mean, we're making something brand new that's never happened before. We're all a part of this day. I mean, let's get really kind of
I was
macro
going to
with this.
say, if we're going to go deep right away, we're going into the realm of like manifestation and quantum physics right off the bat.
Hell yeah, let's go in. Because I think it says a lot about who you are and how you're showing up right now, and therefore how you help people. And, we'll get into that specifically,
Yeah.
what you do and why you do it. But just a small little comment like that can reveal so much about how you see the world, Rachel. And that, um, I think that is so significant. And so for us to be in this space, and yes, we are creating literally a digital file here of
Let's
our
get some
unique
NFTs
words.
on this. I know enough about
Yeah.
that, so don't get me started.
I don't
Sorry,
know it
that's just
either,
where
but
my brain went.
that's right. I don't know. Like, this will sell for 4 Bitcoin. I don't know. Um, I wish. So, but I mean, that's that idea of creation, I think, is important, and we get the opportunity here to be a part of that. Um, Something you said to me earlier, I mean, like in the like pre-recording, even
Yeah.
like in the form that you fill out, um, is that your authenticity is your biggest marketing tool.
Ooh, yes.
Now, I love this. I think that this is the key to standing out today in this wildly complicated market, that you showing up truly as you are, we see it, we sniff it out, and we're attracted to it.
Yeah.
Tell me what that means to you.
Your authenticity. What does that mean? Authenticity being your
Yeah,
biggest
well, as
marketing tool?
using it as a marketing tool, I mean,
Like,
can you really show up authentically if you're thinking of marketing?
yeah, because I guess this goes back to what we were talking about before with creating.
Hmm.
Even though business is business, and I do look at how am I marketing things, what is my strategic plan in positioning certain products and offers, at the end of the day, it is a sacred practice for me. Like it really is an art. Like
Mm.
everything I sell, everything I create is an extension of my heart and soul in some shape or form. So I'm deeply passionate about what I do. And so with that, even though being your true authentic self does create leverage in your marketing, it's not about the marketing. It's more about following your heart, doing the thing you're passionate about. And when you do that, because you're in your authentic truth, naturally the marketing and the hype and the audience that you've been desiring tends to follow. Like you and I were speaking about that, as you said, in your own unique experience. When we spoke, I was like, I feel like you've really expanded from the time when we first met. And you're like, well, what does that mean? And we were sharing about coming into your own authentic truth. And you shared how, that they came to this point where like, you know what? I'm just going to go all in. I'm just going to be me. I'm not afraid of them saying no anymore. And that's what it's about. Because think of it the other way. If you didn't do that, if you weren't standing fully in your authentic truth, what would the result be? They can still say no. And chances are they will say no, because there's this weird energetic shift or thing that happens when people know when you're not being your true authentic self, because you're trying too hard, essentially. It comes
I've been trying to put I just want to lean into this for a second, because I think you're a good person to talk about this with, even as you talk about it right here. Yeah, there's clearly there's passion behind it, but there's also experience around this. And I've been trying to define that, essentially, because that's the best I have is you can notice. You can see when someone is being inauthentic. But at this point, that's about as clear as I can get with it. Would you is there anything else that you can add to any specific markers that you can see, I guess? What do you have?
What's coming to mind is the topic of embodiment. Have you heard this word or this topic?
Well, sure. I would not be capable to talk about it, but I hope that you are, because you're going to go into it.
Okay, so let's talk about, stepping into your higher self or creating that reality of your dreams, thinking of that higher level identity that you hold for yourself, that you're not quite there yet. This is a conversation that you will have oftentimes in self-love, business coaching, fitness coaching, even like picturing yourself as a healthier, more fit version than you are currently, for example. And it's the term embodiment is also very loosely thrown around in the coaching industry, particularly I would say in the spiritual coaching realm.
Sure. And like around like manifesting kind of thing. Like you need to embody the person that you see yourself becoming now or something, right? Okay.
But what does that really mean? Like I have so many students inside of Transcend Academy that ask, I hear Rachel talk about embodiment a lot. I see it all online. What does that even mean? Like I get it, but I don't get it. And I think embodiment is stepping into your authentic self. So it's that pivotal moment where something just clicks. It's like you've practiced enough confidence, you've practiced enough courage, you've practiced sales enough, you've practiced the content creation enough, whatever it is that you're striving towards, you've practiced it enough to the point where it's now second nature to you. You don't have to try to be anybody else. You literally are that person. And that's embodiment.
Sounds like a lot of work to get there.
When did you decide that?
Okay. No.
I'm getting coached you now on this session.
Okay, but so follow-up question. Then I'm gonna I promise I'm gonna ask the question, what do you do and why do you get here? But so the follow-up would be, okay, so somebody who seems like they're showing up at that level, seems like they're showing up in its second nature. They're just constantly coming out with stuff, and it's even powerful stuff. Like it's making a difference. It's impacting people. And yet I might sit there and go, something's off about this person. Like it feels like everybody that's following them is getting duped in some way. Like something's not there. And yet they're making an impact. So let's not poo-poo that. But maybe it's not my job actually to judge and to figure that out, but how do we know if that embodiment is actually there and
that is real? Okay, how do you actually know if the embodiment's there or real? This is a hard one because two things are coming to mind. I'm thinking of somebody in particular based off of what you said, where I had a similar experience. And that person ended up being the real deal. I actually invested into one of their programs because I was like, you know what? I'm tired of judging this person. I'm going to find out for myself. That's the
Cool.
smarter
Yep.
thing to do. So I invested in one of their programs, and I would say for the most part, they were the real deal. But it has to be the real deal for you, because the way that that person was doing things was not how I wanted to do it at all. She's great at what she does.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was to take on the same level of capacity, the same level of boundaries, her own unique approach and how she approaches her marketing and content and everything, I would be, I don't know,
Yeah.
extreme burnout. Like my life would be in shambles because of the amount of time and work she puts into it.
Right.
Now, yes, you have to put time into your goals, but you get to decide if you're going to work 60 hours or 20 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. I have one more.
Okay, great. I love that.
Resistance. The other thing is sometimes you're judging because that person has something that you want that you haven't fully embodied yet.
Yeah.
And so you're triggered by them.
Yeah.
So then you have to get clear on asking yourself, like, what is this really bringing up for me? And get curious about that so that you can, if it is a trigger, you can then go dive in. And then naturally they get to be one of your teachers without even paying them as a mentor, because they just helped you solve that trigger.
But you have to be willing
100%.
to accept that. And so I think that came up when you were even saying the first one, is like, oh yeah, okay, this sounds like it's not about competition, but celebration. Like, well, sure, I'll just go in. Like, what if I'm judging from a distance, or I'm making up something from a distance? What if I go in, and then I go in and I see, oh yeah, no, there's something real there. It's just not, that's not the way I would do it. And then the other one is this, something's showing up there that you have to, it's a mirror. It's showing you something about yourself. And so and that's what I said earlier, like, maybe it's not my job to figure this out for someone else. It's like typing someone on the Enneagram. They constantly say, don't type other people, because you just don't know. The surface may not be what's inside. And so I think what I'm hearing from you, thank you, because you're already showing us your expertise. You're already just opening things up for me. You're asking me, when did I decide something? I may or may not go into that.
Like, when did I decide that?
I've blacked out since then. I'm just constantly thinking about this. So thank you for opening us up to that. And I think that, there's also something that we can focus on here, because authenticity is the key. And if someone's out there thinking, well, like, great, Alex, how do I show up authentically? Yeah, there's a path here.
Yeah.
And the path is through embodiment. And look, I already know that you're somebody that's an expert to help us through that, to guide us through that. Tell me a little bit more. What do you do now? What do you say? This is who I am. This is what I do. And this is the impact that I really see.
My elevator pitch changes depending on who I'm speaking to, because what I do is so hard to put into like one word. To some, I'm a life coach. To others, I'm a business coach. And then to another group of people, I'm training and certifying coaches in a variety of modalities. So what specifically do? I am, like, by title, a certified trainer in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, EFT, which is known as tapping, hypnotherapy, time techniques, which is similar to timeline therapy, and life and success coaching. So that's really my main thing, is training and certifying. But like at the core of all these little pockets that I get to play in, I really just help people peel back the layers of self and break down the barriers.
And there's a key right there, right? So when that happens, then whatever, how you show up and you work with these people, it leads to a result. It leads to an impact. And you're saying that the impact is we're peeling something back. So when that happens, how does that affect them?
It can be so multifaceted. Like, I'm just imagining in my head right now, like dominoes, right? Because like when you change one thing in your life, oftentimes so many other things change. For example, the metaphor that's coming to mind right now, or like analogy, is we were talking about fitness earlier. So if you become that healthy, fit person, let's say, maybe you weren't so fond of your body, but now you've lowered your body fat a little bit, and you gained a bit of muscle, and you look in the mirror, you're like, ooh, I look good. You're going to be more confident. You're going to naturally feel more happy because you're working out more. So now your whole perspective on life changes because you're no longer that lack of confidence so person. You're happy, you're confident, you're outgoing. You're going to look at the world that way and say, oh, there's an opportunity for me. Hey, that's a cute girl. I think I'm going to go ask her out. Whereas if you never went to the gym in the first place, for example, if that was your goal, you might never ask that person out.
Right.
So it can
So, but that end result of making your own choices, like, is that like is it that confidence? One domino leads to the next.
How do you get to the end result? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I guess no. What would, in your mind, what do you see as a typical, or what's your very favorite end result of people that you serve?
Oh, that's a great question. What's my favorite end result? This unshakable sense of like internal power.
Wow.
Like knowing that you can accomplish anything, you can have anything, you can have anything you want. That's the best end result.
Mm. You just sit in that for a second. That's good.
I know. I'm like, let's just. It's so good. It feels
unshakable
so good.
Internal power.
Yeah, it's like this. It's similar to you. Like you said, you just dropped into it. It's like when you drop in, you just drop in. There's no going back. Even if obstacles or challenges arise, you will never be taken out of your power ever again. You just can't.
Yeah. And the fallacy is that now you're, unshakable or indestructible means that nothing hurts or nothing gets in the way. But that's, as I say, it's a fallacy. There's the barriers are still there, the hurdles are still there, the dips are still there, but there's some sort of new internal power, to use your words. I
wouldn't say nothing hurts, because it does hurt, but nothing hurts for too long when you know how to harness your power.
Yeah, it's climbing, it's coming out of the dip quicker. It's
100%.
I talk about, even flipping that. You picture a dip, whoop, it's a little ditch. And I talk about even flipping that and seeing that that's the climax.
Yeah.
As far as the story arc goes, it's this rainbow, it's this thing. And because we see it as I gotta, now the hard part is climbing up out of that hole. But maybe it's, no, I'm actually coming, I get to ride the mountain down now.
Yeah.
So internal power, this power that is that how you feel? Is that like, that's how you're showing up right now? Do you feel like,
power? Yes. Yeah.
More than ever in a totally new way? What?
Definitely more than ever. It's interesting because we're always evolving. Mm-hmm. So even though I feel in my power right here, right now, today, I know there's another version of me in the near future that I haven't fully embodied or mastered yet. Does that make sense?
Well, for sure. But if you were to focus, are you going to focus on the future self that you're right?
No, I'm just saying I still got ways to go. Like, yes, I'm fully my power and I haven't made it yet.
This is the beautiful part about our story, right? As you're on page or chapter 12, or maybe even this is the last page of the book that's being written right now, but we hope and desire that there's more to come and there is still more book to be written. But it's not my job to tell you what's in book 7 when I'm in book 3 of the series,
Totally.
So for where you're at right now, experiencing something that you in more of a way than you have before.
Yeah.
Where does that begin for you? This idea of, if I can land on that word, unshakable internal power, or let's just go with power. Was that instilled in you as a kid? Was that something that in your home? What was that like? Yeah. Okay. So tell me.
I wish I grew up with, unshakable power instilled with me. I don't think anyone does, but I actually used to say, like, introduce my story with like, hey, I'm Rachel, yada, yada, yada. I just don't know if it's nature, it might be nurture, don't know, but I was born with a lower sense of self-esteem than most. So like, that's how I used to introduce myself. So I definitely wasn't born with instilled power. That's for sure.
Okay. Oh, man, I don't know if it's the if it's the parent in me, if it's the ex-youth pastor in me, or if it's just the human in me, that I hear that and I just go, wow, well, like that just sunk, something just sunk there. When I, like, you think of this idea of like born with less self-esteem than anyone else. There's immediately a measurement that's in play there. That was like, what, like, so something's showing, right? When you're an infant,
Yeah.
you're not thinking I'm a dirtbag. Somewhere along,
I
that's why
mean,
I would say,
an infant doesn't know what a dirtbag is, but depending on the energy that child's given, you could.
okay.
Have you heard of epigenetics?
No.
Okay, so
I was going to make some
epigenetics,
joke about it, but I
I
couldn't.
don't I
No.
don't know enough about it, but I do
Okay.
know that a part of the study is the concept that when you're in the womb,
Mhm.
you associate and adopt whatever feelings and experiences the mother's feeling. And it can even go back as far as other generations. So, for example, before I was even in existence, I was a tiny, tiny little egg in my mom's
Mhm.
ovaries when she was in my grandmother's womb. So, not only was I experiencing my mom's
Mhm.
pain, but also my grandmother's pain. So, in a way, part of it could be genetic or
Yeah.
psychological based off of like generational trauma. Another part could be nature, which that would be the genetic part, or could be nurture based off
Right.
of the environment you grew up in, or both,
So how
right?
does that, that's fascinating. And that's going to open up and send some people down a rabbit hole for
I
sure.
know.
What, okay. So when you say that, you said, I used to introduce my story like this.
Yeah.
How does that, how did that show up? Your, wee little
The lack of
Rachel.
self-esteem.
Yeah.
How did it show up? I just remember as early as 3 years old feeling very different to other people.
Mm.
I remember having like self-consciousness issues around my body at that age. Like I remember having a firm, cute little baby belly still at 3 years when most of their, like, as you become a kid, your belly starts to flatten out. Mine did not. And I just remember being very self-conscious about that as early as 3 years old. Um, it also showed up in nervousness in like social situations.
Mhm.
Showed up in sadness. I also like to say that I didn't know true happiness until I was about 20 years old. So yeah, it shows up in a lot of different ways and affects your perspective of life, which is going to affect the results that you get.
What were you, um, was it were you aware enough of that you were like, I just wish that I didn't feel this way? Like what did you desire, back then?
I desired to be different. I did. I desired to be happy, like what at the opposite of what I was feeling. So I desired to be
To be
happy.
different
I
than you
desired,
were, not to be
yes,
different from
different than
others.
I
Just,
was.
yeah.
Yeah. Desired to be happy, desired to be loved. I didn't feel loved. Desired to be, even though I was loved, I didn't feel loved.
Mhm.
Um, what else did I desire? Desired to be liked by friends.
Liked and loved.
Yeah.
Just
I guess deep
open
down,
up.
I was desiring connection.
Yeah. What's that distinction between I was loved, but I didn't feel loved?
The distinction, what I mean, I'm like in my head, I'm like, it was me because I was loved. Actually, that's not true. You know what? As a child, I experienced some traumatic events. And even though I was loved, I think those traumatic events left too much of an imprint on me psychologically at the time to see how loved I truly was.
Hmm. So there's a sense of you're going through life in these like tumultuous teenage years and junior high years, and everything's shifting and changing and life's an earthquake as it is, like, who am I, where do I belong, what's my role in this world? And all the while you already have decided or feel like I'm different,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm
High school was
um
brutal for me.
yeah.
Not from a social standpoint, because I was in the cool crowd, but like emotionally behind closed doors, I was a mess. And that's actually where I ended up finally getting to finding that power within me was after like my depression getting so bad in high school and finally having to do something about it.
Well, even that though, you're like, no, no, yeah, I had this desire to be liked, and I was also in the cool crowd.
And I was in the cool crowd. And I still didn't feel good enough.
So was that all just facade? Like what was the effort there? If people are genuinely like accepting you or like pulling you in or saying you belong here.
I wasn't accepting me.
Was there anybody? So when did that shift? You said something needed to change
After
in your
high
teenage
school.
years
Yeah,
after
so
high
when I
school.
was 18, give me a second, 18, I think I was around 18, 18 to 19. I lied. I was 19. Okay, so I was 19. I'm like trying to get
Terrible.
this.
Ruins everything.
I'm getting so old. It's getting hard to keep track. I was 19 and my mom and I had just gotten in a fight. My parents had separated in my 18th birthday, they separated around that time. They're together now, but growing up, it was one of those relationships where, there was a lot of love in the home, but there was also a lot of dysfunction and shouting and just, they probably should have done couples counseling a lot earlier than they did, but they've done it and they made it. So that's great. But it really affected me at the time. So my mom and I
just
had
you,
gone.
only child, or like?
No, I have two older brothers.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yes. So my mom and I had gone in a fight. And I was just, I felt like my entire external world was just crumbling. And the fight was about my parents separating. And my mom said to me something along the lines of, I know what you're going to do, because she was dropping me off to my friend's house, the guys. I hung out with the guys. She's like, I know what you're going to do over there. Don't go and get high, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm not, Mom. Like, you think that's what I'm going to go do? And we just got in a massive fight and I couldn't keep that up anymore. I was tired of my mom being on me. She has a recovery background. I was smoking and drinking a lot. And I just couldn't do that anymore. So I wrote her a letter explaining what was going on in my life, how I was feeling. And we had this conversation. It led to a conversation where I was like, I know I have greatness within me. I want to be great. I just don't know how to be great. And then like 4 days later, I was on a plane to Salt Lake City, Utah to go to a residential treatment center. And that's how and where it started.
So again, there's this juxtaposition between I don't like myself, I don't love myself, I don't know what to do or how to be this. I'm nervous, I'm comparing, I'm sad. And also, I know that there's something great within me.
Yeah.
What? Like,
what was
that's
that
the voice.
Like, how did you know?
I guess so. That's the thing that I think, if we can all tap into that, if you can discover that, if that's the nugget that I think that's the little spark that is put in and stays there, that's the reason that I work with a 60-year-old and help her discover something new about herself that she's never really seen as consistent in her life, because there's been this spark of greatness all along that simply needed to be lit or exposed or uncovered. And you knew it was there, though nobody was really telling you?
No one was telling me. I think honestly, to me, knowing that there was greatness within me was the peace. Like, it brought me internal peace, because I hated who I was. I hated my life so much that I didn't want to exist, but I wasn't going to do anything about that. And so it was the only thing that made sense to me. I was like, well, if I am here, if I am meant to exist, there's got to be a bigger reason why.
So then you go to this treatment center.
Yes.
And things shift. Was it, 19 years old? Like, was it just the support there? Was it the, here's other options? Was it was it self-development? Was it just getting away from the substances? What shifted there? How did it shift?
What shifted? I would say, well, there was lots of things. Everything you just said was yes and to all. I think the greatest thing for me was I think residential treatment is something that honestly every single person should have the privilege of experiencing. I like to explain it as sleepover camp for adults.
Yeah.
I had 60 days, started as 30, but I had 60 days of complete undivided attention on me, where I got to have the therapeutic support I needed to look back on my entire life up until that point, to notice, how could I have done things differently, or where did I give my power away, or what boundaries do I need to implement to support me to be healthier and happier moving forward. I got to ride and play with horses. I
Mm.
got to go to the movies. I made new friends. So it really was like sleepover camp, I explained. I mean, I also had to do a lot of chores and wake up early and go to the gym when I hated going to the gym, but that's now actually a staple in my life. Like, if I'm not going to the gym regularly, I can slip into like a laziness slumber, let's call it,
Yeah.
pretty quickly. So the thing that really changed was through doing all those things, I started to just look at things differently, particularly myself. Like, that was the first time when I started to actually love who I am. Because before it was all the external reasons or the things that had happened to me that made me not good enough or not lovable. But none of that's true.
Just imagining, again, 19 years old. And like there was, when I first started life coaching, there's a lot of young adults that I was working with, 21, 23, people in college. And they're asking me, what's next? What do I do? And I remember them specifically. There was one guy, and he's like, yeah, I told my friends that I've got a meeting with my life coach. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, but wouldn't it be amazing if every student had something like this? If everyone had,
Wouldn't
I just think
it?
of that going to 19 before you actually step out to college. I mean, depending what age it is, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you had that kind of a focus, that sort of an identity clarification, so that you're not figuring that out in the drunken stupor of party school and whatever groups you're getting involved in, but you made this significant shift to figure out who you were
Yeah.
as you enter adulthood.
Well, I mean, I think I was in therapy my whole life. So
Mhm.
like I knew I had
Right.
leverage on that. And addiction ran in my family. So I had seen enough of it to kind of play it forward. Like, I was to the point where it didn't matter how much I smoked, I just wasn't getting high anymore. And for a very little girl, I could drink a lot, but there's only so much drunkenness you can hold in a day.
Right.
Um, so at that point, it was like, well, crap, either I'm going to have to use something harder and stronger, or I'm going to have to live my life completely different.
Mm.
And I had like a flash forward, even though my mom was not dysfunctional, I had a flash forward of like me as a parent and having to break it to my kid like my mom did, that I was mommy's going away to treatment,
Mm.
or going away to rehab. And that was a very difficult time for me at 12 years old when my mom went away. And so I didn't want to put my child through that. So at that point, I was like, I got to figure something else out. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I'm going to be that parent.
And so significant things here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think people are going to hear this and they're going to, as we create something here for someone to listen to, I would encourage those that are listening to go back and listen to what you're saying here, because it's as much a narrative as it is education, and hearing these experiences that are going to enlighten things for people that are listening, saying like, whoa, that's what happened to me, but I've never been able to describe it.
Yeah.
But Rachel just did. And so I just think that's so significant. So, we're not winding down quite yet or landing the plane, but I just feel like the need to say thank you for how you are opening this up for us.
Thank you.
How does that then carry you forward, to where we are
Now.
now? Obviously there's a lot in between, but kind of bring us through that journey.
So how's that carry into stepping and fully being in my power now? Well, I came home. I was dedicated to the 12-step program for some time. So consistently and continuously doing, personal development and self-healing work. And then from there, I went to school for addiction counseling, and I became an addiction counselor. And I was in early sobriety as well. So being in early sobriety while working with the recovering addicts, and I was also working with court mandated men who had anger management issues. So a lot of them were coming from like DUIs, domestic abuse situations. It was very heavy, and I didn't want to do it anymore. But I knew I wanted to help people still. So, speeding up a few years, not really knowing where to go, what to do, I found coaching.
Yeah.
And I actually sat on my certificate. I became certified. I don't even remember what year. I'm going to say probably 2010, 2000, something like that. No, it would have been 2014, probably something like that. Got certified as a health coach, but for 4 years later, I still did nothing with it because I was lacking the confidence to put myself out there and actually, speak my message and do the do.
So there was enough of a clarity to say, I'm here to help people. I love, serving people in this way and supporting these people. But my goodness, the space I'm in is dark. It's hard. It's bumpy. I don't know. It's, again, whatever the strength is that you have, it's too much pressure or too much something for you. And so you're like, well, there's got to be another way to do this. So there's enough clarity and confidence to go and pay for and work through a certification. But then it drops off.
Yeah.
We see this all the time, don't we?
Yeah.
Somebody says, I'm confident I'm going to start a thing, whatever it is, from a podcast to a whole business to a program to a family. And they say, here I am, I'm going to start this thing, confident this is what I want right now. And then the excitement drops off. As you said you didn't have was it courage? What was it to continue that you needed? I said
confidence, but it really was courage, because you can be afraid, but you still got to move forward and do it anyway. So I would say it's courage. Yeah. I also lacked the guidance though. Like the program I signed up for was great at teaching you about nutrition and health, but they had a business coaching component to it, which really taught you nothing about how to build a business. And there was no accountability on that aspect. So I felt really lost and confused. I'm sure you can relate to this, but when you're starting your business in the online space and you have no foundation on what to do or where to start, it's so overwhelming. You don't know where to even start that oftentimes you won't even take that step.
Yeah. It's I feel like is there a catchy phrase to say about that? It would, like in action, and I can't think of it right now. It's, what is it? There's too many options and you.
Indecision. I don't know. We might be thinking of something different, but what I'm thinking of is indecision is a decision in and of itself.
Okay. That's a good one too. Maybe this gets edited out. Who knows? We'll see. But so at some point though, that shifted. You didn't have what you needed, and you didn't have the guidance you needed. You didn't have the courage. And then what tipped the scales there? What
Tony
was
Robbins.
The change?
Tony Robbins tipped it for me.
Sorry, who? I'm not sure that
Robbins, the one and only.
How many people have TR as their turning point in their story? I wonder.
And I'm so incredibly grateful for it because I didn't even know who he was. I won a ticket, and I was at a place where now I was 25-ish. I was sober. I was happy, truly happy. I had accomplished a lot since recovery. I was for the first time ever, an honor roll student. I'm enjoying school. I'm deeply in love. I'm engaged. All these things were happening that were great in my life. And I had this moment where it's either there's more for me or I'm going to die early because my life cannot be this good at 25. Is this as good as it gets? There's got to be more. So I came across a coach who I was following on social, and she was giving away a free ticket to a Tony Robbins. And all I knew about him was a little snippet I saw of his Netflix video. And I remember thinking how impactful those interventions are and how I would love to experience one in person. That's all I knew about him. And I won a ticket. So I went to the event, and that's when everything changed.
That's how I got involved with Chris and Lori Harder, where we met was in their Fast Foundations mastermind. And I never heard of them before. And then 2019, the summer, I asked a friend, I was like, I need a business coach, I think. He's like, you don't know, you need a community. You got to join this thing. And I was like, okay. I went and listened to one of his podcasts, and then made the investment. It wasn't even winning a ticket. I put out real money for that thing.
Yeah.
And then you jump in. It's amazing how those connections, those sort of, I'm not sure. And then
They're
everyone else is like,
expanders, they're
you don't
amplifiers.
know it. And then
Yeah.
it starts something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what did you hear and experience in that space now as we kind of land the
I
plane
love
here?
that.
What really stood out to you?
So two
What
things.
shifted? Yeah.
Two things. So I ended up going to two events. So the one that I won a ticket to was the first one. And I remember, like, I can see it in my head right now. I remember him intervening on a woman who had a very similar story to me. And I was legit like crying tears of gratitude for this woman because I knew the pain that she was locked in when she was so attached to her story and what had happened to her. But I also knew the victory that lay on the other side when she chose to move forward and to
Mm.
start, rewriting a new story and the meaning she attached to that moment. Um, and so that was the moment where it's like, holy shit. I hope I'm allowed to swear on this, but holy crap.
Of course, yeah.
I'm a swearer. I really try not to because it's not elegant, but
You've been very,
I've been very reserved
very
today.
good so far.
I've
Okay,
been
good.
very good.
Great. So you have this
So
holy
it's
shit
like,
moment.
holy shit moment. I'm not meant to be an interior designer. I'm supposed to be doing coaching, which is what I was doing all along. I just never took the first steps for it. So I came home from that event and I changed my Instagram bio to health coach, but I had not once, created an offer or a lead magnet or anything. I just was hoping that would be enough for people to find me, which it wasn't, obviously. So 9 months later, at the next event that my husband and I ended up going to for our honeymoon, had this revelation where I really felt like I was chosen. It was like a spiritual experience. I don't know how else to explain it, but I felt like I was chosen to do this work. And it was really time for me to step up because I either gotta, do it, go big or go home. And I chose to go big. So I came home. I knew I was gonna have to do something different. So I came home from that event and I hired my first coach for 15K when I had no money at all, no
Mhm.
job. I had just been fired from my interior design job and no clients. And that's when and how it all started.
I couple things came to mind there. Um, when you said, this sort of I was chosen experience, I think it was Anthony Trucks ask this question, what was God's promise to the world when you were made?
I like that.
And that just brought up this question. I just have that written in my notebook somewhere. But as you said that, this idea of I'm chosen to do this work. And then to
Mhm.
draw back to your story about this, I was born different. I was born with less self-esteem. I wonder what it is, maybe there was just some opening up to realize that no, the promise wasn't you're going to be different. You're going to be less than the rest of the world. It was you're actually going to help people discover their own
Yeah,
power.
I love
Um,
that. That's bringing me so much peace, even in this moment. So thank you for
mm.
sharing that.
And then there's this significant value exchange of money. You're like, hey, I'll just drop
Yeah.
15K on a coach and see what that does. And there's a lot of pressure put on that then. And it started something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, as I look at you and hear this and go through this, I've already thanked you because I think that you just brought us into so many different emotional levels there and specific teachable moments. But there is this beautiful journey for you going from this person who ultimately feels like less than, right?
Mhm.
I mean, just as you
Yeah.
said from the beginning, it's just I'm not as good as, it will never be good. This is the best it could be or will be. And yet there's this glimmer that I'm made for something more. And as you shift and you put yourself intentionally into treatment, into getting help, you discover that this is what I want to do as well. I want to help people. And then it's just this journey step by step of discovering how are you going to do that. But it's really been this like journey from you of this little spark becoming this raging fire, this powerful consuming thing that you are here to help others ignite as well. It's almost like there's this,
Yeah.
from less than to powerful
from a
more than ever. I don't know.
non-cocky way.
Right, exactly. And that's the beauty of it. That's the authenticity of it.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would say that you're cocky or arrogant.
No, but from going from less than to more than, you would think that like that's like a
Exactly.
egotistical or self-consumed thought, but we're all more than. Like we all are more than. We just have to consciously choose to step into that.
And it's I mean, in your story, like many of ours, it's the people and the support that we had along the way that allow us the space to discover that.
Always the people. Yeah.
I mean, to go Tony Robbins, it's about unleashing the power within, right? So maybe we'll get him on the podcast too. Come on.
That would be legit. One of my dreams as well.
This is so incredible. And so if somebody is listening to this and they feel a connection to you, which I don't doubt that they will, and they're thinking, yeah, that is where I find myself. I'm constantly comparing. It feels like I'm stuck. I must be in a trap. I'm different than anybody else who's doing well out there. It just won't, it's not in the cards for me. And yet there's a glimmer. So if somebody's sitting there with that feeling of less than, and also this sense of like that, but is there more? And I wonder what that is. We know that you're the person to help them uncover that, unleash that, to ignite that. What's the best ways for them to connect with you to start that conversation?
Always Instagram. That's my favorite place to hang out. So my handle is at the Rachel Joy 1. And you can just message me, say you heard this podcast so I can give you a little shout out.
That's right.
And then we can chat.
Love it. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your authenticity, for truly showing up and helping us also feel fabulous today, and for sharing your story, which was anything but boring. I am so grateful for your time.
Thank you.